Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of TBR. And I'm George Binns. This evening, we want to talk a little bit about the debt in Beverly. Seems to be getting more than a little out of hand. And to help us understand it, we have Jim Modugno back. Welcome, Jim.
Well, thank you, George, for inviting me, and appreciate it.
Well, as you can see, we've got a big problem coming, and it seems to be getting worse.
Yeah, definitely. When you look at it, we point out here that the city administration has a goal of all, so really what we're looking for is what's behind all this debt, right? A lot of it is items that should be built, right? But the costs of them are now becoming prohibited or at least exorbitant in terms of what the taxpayers might be able to take. So looking behind it is, it's really what is the administration's viewpoint, and right, this is the starting point. The administration has a goal of all city-owned buildings being carbon neutral by 2035. That drives cost up by as much as 30 to 40% in the design process. Currently, we're looking at something in the range of 130 million of what they call open debt, and this comes from the city's own information. And over the next 10 years, they're planning to pay that debt down by 55.1 million, which ultimately leaves you with 75 million that you're still going to be carrying beyond. And of course, when you look at this, they have new proposals that they've presented for $113 million. So you add those two together, and you're starting to really begin looking at 243 potential, because the new numbers they have for this year are really proposed.
Yeah.
Outside of a couple of projects that are clearly moving, like City Hall and the library type of thing that they're trying to drive the cost. One is scheduled at about 25 million, City Hall. The other at about 18 million for the library, right?
Well, the City Hall is 25 million plus the one.
Almost 8 million.
Yeah,
what they
7.3 million.
Yeah, for the dollar store.
Yeah, to buy the dollar store, plus another couple of 100,000 to renovate it.
Yep.
So we're talking another 7.5, almost like you said, 8 million.
Yeah.
So it's the old joke about a million here, a million there. Pretty soon you're talking real money.
Yeah, you're talking trillions.
Yeah. And we're getting into all these things. And one of my concerns, I've mentioned, we've talked about it before a couple of times, is when you look at the situation in the city, that we're talking on how much debt we've got. They may have this magic 6%, 7% number. Well, that's the yearly interest payments.
That is the payment.
And what I think gets sort of lost in the shuffle is that most people think about, you got a mortgage, and you start paying the mortgage. It's a fixed amount every year. But buried in that is some interest and some principal.
Correct.
And little by little, the principal drops off, becomes larger, and the interest payment becomes smaller. And in the end, at 25 years, the house is yours free and clear.
Right.
But in bonding for a city debt, the issue comes down to what is, you float a bond, somebody buys the bond, they expect to get the full value of the bond back in 20, 25 years, some number like that.
But
and what you pay in the interim is interest
on that bond.
on that bond.
Right. I buy muni bonds myself.
Yeah. And when the bond comes due, all of a sudden, you got to come up with the full value of it. So this, it's like a balloon mortgage is, I guess, the closest thing to think of it.
Yeah, and you think about those numbers, and you think about, if you add up that 113 with the 130, and again, some of that numbers in there is proposed debt, and we can look at the chart in a moment, it's 243.6 million potential. I always call it debt because you owe that money.
Yeah.
If everything comes in fruition, then you're going to be paying it out. And of course, as we know on a lot of these programs, they go out 10, 20, 25. They can even go out 30 years. So it's cumulative over time. And I think that's where I see a problem in the future.
Yeah, it's going to restrict what we could do in the future.
Well, yes, and if you think about the federal government's at what, $36 trillion or something like very close to that. Well, they can print money, right? The Treasury just puts out bonds, right? And they get it.
Yeah.
State and cities, we can't print the money. Yeah. It has to come from somewhere. A lot of our budget is waiting for money that might come from the feds or the state, but it's majority of it is taxpayers' money.
Yeah.
So I think it becomes a really kind of issue. I think if we look at the next chart, you think we should look at that next chart and take a peek at it and see what we're looking at?
Yeah. What are all the bits and pieces in this thing?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at this chart, it's showing you that the top section of this chart is showing you the first section is everything that's already out there, that they've already accumulated, and it's out over a period of time. The chart only goes out 10 years because that's all I can find on the city site per se. But we know it goes out further. Some of the things that I'd like to highlight is that we're still paying for the Beverly High School. And there are 4, I would say, bonds out there, right, that accumulate for $33 million. That's still left on the Beverly High School fit. If you look a little deeper in this thing, you'll see on the middle school, we have $58 million that is still outstanding out there, right? There's 3 bonds that are out there, and of course, people tear them, right, just like people do CDs, right, out there. And then we still got $21.5 million on the police station, are the big numbers that are in this equation. Yeah, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. And I think this is the thing that we're starting from a position of being significantly in debt. And when you add all this thing up, you show it down there in just all those numbers. But hey, that's $250 billion. Yeah,
and when you look at just if you go all the way down to the bottom line down there and you come across the line, you begin to look at the fact that we potentially could be paying up to $13 to $14 million a year, right, in just interest payments.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's where the federal government is getting into trouble right now, is as they, especially as they hold the bond rate up, the interest payments is the second largest payment compared to the military budget. And that's putting a serious crimp on the federal budget as to what kind of things can they do.
Right.
And I think the same effect is going to hit us, that there's a lot of things we would like to do. There's an article that showed up today that there's a problem getting high school kids into tech school. And what are you going to do about it? Well, it's going to cost money, because what they said, we need more seats. Okay, how do you get more seats? Well, you build another building, and, and these are things that are going on. And there was an article recently in the Globe that Massachusetts is number 10 in terms of potholes. And
like I hit one on the way down here today.
Yeah, and this is years ago. I went to Lobster Fest and met one of the aldermen from way back. He'd retired to Florida and come back. And he made the comment that, well, you know, you're in Beverly when your car starts bouncing. So we've got some serious issues that need to be worked on besides being green. And I think this is the balance that I don't see there.
No, and you know, anybody who looks at these slides or even goes on the city site and tries to find this chart will see that there's some things in there that are legit, but it's that premise that everything we do has to be green. It means we have to be, every building we touch is got to be carbon neutral. It means that when we buy school buses, we need to buy electric buses that are double the cost of a regular bus, right? And every time we're buying those type of things and we're paying more for it, it almost feels like we are citizens of Beverly. we can't save the world from
No.
global climate change, right? And yet the burden comes back to the things you're talking about. The streets aren't that good. The sidewalks are horrible, right? As I'm a walker, you could twist your ankle any day of the week because they're that bad,
Yeah.
right? So, there are things that are being neglected, and you also have to plan for that rainy day at some point. And I hear them a lot talk about free cash sometimes. We make sure we have free cash. There's no free cash. It came from George and Jim and everybody else.
Well, it's a little murkier than that. Free cash is really a case where some department over budgeted and didn't
Then
spend it all.
Yep.
And so what is called free cash is money they didn't spend that they said they were going to.
I guarantee you they planned that.
Yeah,
Not the department heads, but in the budgeting,
yeah.
right?
So you get into some of these situations, and the point you were making that, yeah, Beverly can do a lot of stuff to become green and
Yeah.
carbon neutral and all that, but no matter what we do, it isn't going to make a big difference or any significant difference in the climate model.
Right.
So, yeah, it's nice to be efficient. I'm all for efficient. But one of the things that I just don't see in a lot of these discussions is what's the payback period?
Right.
And way back when I used to work for a living, that was the first question, okay, you want to do such and such? What's it going to cost us? And how much money do we save? And when do we get it break even?
Yeah, it's the return on investment. That's what.
Yeah.
That's what, the same in
And,
our industry. So it was that
and,
way. So
I just don't see the city running that way. There was incidents, for instance, that they're talking about putting a ground source heat pump in the library.
correct.
All in favor of ground source heat pumps. They're the best way to do it if the conditions are right. And supposedly the crew that's going to do it, they did a test boring, okay? And the comment was, well, the soil conditions are not exactly ideal. Okay. But he made the comment that a lot of places would like to have soil this good. Fine. That's all nice and interesting. What I want to know is, okay, how many more holes do you have to put in the ground to accommodate this less than ideal soil?
Right.
And I think you pointed out to me a couple of days ago that the 38 holes that they drilled into the ground for the police station, that added $5 million to the cost of the station. Now the station is 28 million,
Yep.
and almost 20% of it is 38 holes in the ground.
Right.
Now, again, I never saw a payback analysis. Oh, that's the way we do it.
And so I think that brings us to the next stage of the things. What I would consider to be, if you turn the page for us to go to risk factors, I think I immediately identified that the very first one is the form of government we have is a strong format.
Yeah.
And that means limited power for the city council. And by all attentions, they're trying to do the best they can. But the city administration is really focused on this neutral thing. And as a result of it, we're definitely going to get cost increase. But some of the issues is that the council is not involved in the decision making. Once the city decides they're going to do the library process, right?
Yeah.
They tell them we might need some things for money for design and other factors. And then they just go off and they do their thing. And by all accounts, it appears that they have an organized fashion of how they go about it, and it's probably well done. It seems to be well done. But the difference here is they're not telling anybody what they're doing, and as they're moving along. The council is not advised on it. I think one of the councilors indicated it's been like 21 months since the last time they talked about the library with them in terms of money and other things. And so what I'm really saying is that with this activity, and they come at the last moment, if the council doesn't push back a little bit on these things and become a partner in this game, and also you and I, or residents in the city, should be a partner on what we're spending money on. Yeah. Because nobody, when I voted at the poll booth, was telling me that I was voting for green everything, where I'm spending 20, 30, 40% more money. They didn't tell us we were doing that. The council doesn't seem to have a say unless they push back a little bit. And if they don't push back, their powers are just going to be neutralized, and they'll just be rubber stamps. And I don't think they want to be, because I think they're pretty, they want to do the right thing by the community.
Yeah, that's what they said they were running to get elected for.
Yeah, exactly.
And the point you're making is that way back when, the library is only going to be $2 or $3 million upgrade.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it becomes 18 million. Wait a minute, guys. How did this all happen?
And when did it happen?
Yeah. And it was the same game with the renovations of the City Hall. First it was 15 million, then it became 25 million, now it's 18 million. It doesn't sound like it's a smooth operation.
Well, if it is a smooth operation, it's in the shadows because they're not involved in the council. And if they're not involved in the council, then the representation, the people are not being represented, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right? Our councilors have to push back on some of these things, right? And do the thing. But they also need to be partners. They need to know what's going on from day one. So there's a lot of things that you could do with this. The key is, if you keep doing this path, the debt is going to really kill us, because as we're moving forward, there are things happening around us, right? Like the state is now going to be they've already advised, I believe, the cities and the towns that they're going to be cutting back on aid because they're running some kind of deficits that's going on. So you have that. But you also have black swan events, things that you don't know that are coming, things that you might have to build that, send some money to the SSGAG now to expand that building for more students.
We've had
right?
two of them in town. The Hall Whitaker Bridge and the Kernwood Bridge.
And the Kernwood bridges, right? Those things happen.
Yeah.
So they need to really be in a position to be able to do that. And if you think you're going to go to the state to help you, they'll help you when you can, but they can't help you forever. But I think there are opportunities that we can do, right? I don't know if you want to look at the next slide that we can do here. Yeah. Statement of work, right? You and I have been in the workplace and business and running projects and everything. And, a statement of work is always important. When I used to go out and negotiate contracts and everything, there had to be a statement of work. Somebody had to know what they were going to be bidding on.
Yeah.
And everybody, and so it can be done. Their processes in the background, though they're not sharing it with, appears they do some of it. But a real statement of work means that you get everybody together. If I was on the council, or I would put it this way, I would recommend to our councilors that they push back on this latest implementation of this $18 million that came out of the blue, and take some time to work with the administration and indicate in some way, working together, that every project coming down should have a statement of work. And on every project, I would recommend that the council be on it, not just a member. They need a whole council that's being updated at least once a month on where they are, what they're doing, what's going to be needed, and so forth, so that they have a position in it. At the same time, I think there should be some residents on that as well, to be informed at about the same time. Oh, the council can do it. I don't know how people went on to do that. But I think the council needs to be involved right from day one, every single month as this project moves on, and they need to be able to share that information and make it available to the public on a regular basis.
Well, that's the other major part of it. Hey, it's my tax dollars you're spending. I would like to know what you're spending them on and why.
Absolutely.
And the way the council gets it is, oh, by the way, we need $18 million.
Yeah.
And the details, well, some things came up.
If you recall, when they went to the council, and I sympathized with them, they were given like a few hours notice that they needed to get them $8 million from free cash.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to buy that dollar store, right?
Yeah.
And they don't even know the whole deal. And then, and the deal on that is very convoluted. It goes in all different directions. And some of it makes sense and some of it doesn't make sense. But the bottom line is, the last moment they're asking for that money.
The makes sense part of it is the city is paying $7.3 million
Yeah.
for a piece of property that the city is assessing at 1.6 million.
Correct.
Right then and there, I think there needs to be an explanation.
Yeah, there isn't, and there never has been one.
No.
And
And it's the same thing with the City Hall. They want to, now it's $18 million to renovate a building that is assessed at 2.6 million. Wait, the disconnect bothers me. Maybe I'm the only one that gets nervous about it, but
no, I don't think so. I don't think a person who has a home that's worth $500,000 is actually gonna tear it down and rebuild it, or even to spend another if they want to spend another million to put into it, they give you 1.5 million.
yeah.
I just, we do things in the city sometimes when it comes to property that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
But I think these programs where if we can get, them to work together on a statement of work, I think it helps a little bit. It gives the community an opportunity to voice their opinion. I know a lot of people have been voicing their opinions on this subject right now. I mean, I look at this whole thing and this percentage of debt is extremely high.
Yeah.
I kind of like the word insane a little bit. It's kind of risky. I would not engage in that myself, running my own household
Yeah.
to run up that much debt that you can't pay it.
I'm going through something like this now that I want to do some renovations in the third floor of my house. And we had a contractors come in, give me some quotes. And it came up to about $250,000. And look at, that's half the price of a house just to make a renovation.
Yeah.
So right now we are all stepping back and thinking, is that really what we want to do? Or is there another way to do it? And I have to do it on my own situation.
Right.
And I can't imagine why doesn't the city? Is there a better way to do this?
Yeah, there's no. I think you're on the right path, right? I'd like them to, and when we say them, we're just saying the whole process, right? I think the mayor needs to think in terms of he needs to work on spending the money, and the council needs to do the same thing. Would you do this if this was your house?
Yeah.
If it was your money, would you be spending this on this? And I know there's some councilors who look that way, but when I look at the bigger picture, I worry about the things that are coming down the path. You look around, the city can't count on a number of things. Car sales are down, that means excise taxes will be down at some point, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then you also have credit card expenses. Credit card debt is up, all-time 10-year high in terms of people being behind schedule on paying it. Mortgages are having those same problem. The car loans having the same issue. That ultimately comes back to roost, and it trickles down into city government as well.
Yeah. And I keep harping on this idea of transparency, but right now I think we all got a notice from the city that the city is going to get into this selling us electricity.
Yeah, they're in the business.
In the business. And you read down through that thing and all the things it's going to do, hey, it sounds pretty good. One of the things that caught my mind is that, okay, you're signing up for 20 months. Okay. And on the document we got from the city, it said that you're locking in a price for 20 months.
Right.
You go on the website of the company that's doing it, and they said, oh, yeah, this is how we get this cheap electricity, cheaper than National Grid, and we buy at the right times. Sounds good. But we can't guarantee the price for the duration of the contract. What? Directly contradicts what the city paperwork says.
Yeah, I've been reading it again.
So get down to who do you believe? And WBUR, for instance, has a bunch of articles about be careful with these alternate sources of electricity.
Yeah.
So again, I recognize we have to have a government that somebody makes the decisions and does the work.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, it's not go off in a dark corner and, oh, by the way, send me some more money.
So look at that, right? So we know what the mission statement is coming out of the mayor's office, right? The neutral thing we talked about.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be neutral, which means it can't be anything. It can't be gas, right? It can't be oil heat, right? That means everything's going electric. He also has his departments looking at electrical vehicles for all the way up to fire trucks,
Yeah.
right? And if you go all electric, I want people to think for a moment. The electrical grids that we have in this nation are not ready for everything that, let's say Beverly is duplicated everywhere in the country. The grids, I doubt, have the ability to do that if everything's on the grid, right? If everything has to be electrical. What happens when the power just can't keep up with it? And what happens if you have a storm and they're down?
Oh, yeah. And that's one of the things I always like about having gas heat. I've never lost gas heat in 55 years.
Yeah.
I've had many power outages over the 55 years.
Yeah.
But the other half of the game is National Grid is going before the state DPU requesting $2.4 billion over the next 5 years to upgrade the grid. Where's the $2.5 billion coming from? Oh, out of that little service charge that comes up on your bill.
Yeah.
Some lady, I forget her name, appeared at the city council meeting, and she pointed out to them, it's all well and good that you can say you get money from the state, you get money from the feds, but I've only got one pocketbook to feed all of these places that funnel money back to you.
I thought that was probably one of the most accurate statements ever made
And
when it comes to where the money comes from.
yeah, and I think this is what the city council and the mayor and the rest of these officials have to get used to, the idea that it ain't their money, it's our money. And we have at least some interest in what are you doing with it?
Absolutely. If you think the budget's $154 million this year, these numbers are really big.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back on my own theme again on this thing. These problems come all back to one thing. I think Beverly should be moving to a city manager, right? We can't have politicians with their own political agendas, with like the green on everything.
Yeah.
We shouldn't do that.
Yeah. And ladies and gentlemen, thanks for sticking with us through this discussion. And as I usually say, at the end of the credits is my email address, and you've got a comment, feel free to send me one. And if you've got a comment you would like to hear on BevCam, we can make that happen too. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.